Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it's time to have a look at the rank 4 vehicles for Italy, and I think what I'm going to do is actually lump in the AUBL 74 or the Orbble 74 in this, just because it's a 6-7 and it doesn't really fit with the other rank 5s, everything else being a whole 1 BR above it, or also 8-0, so yeah, or 8-3. So I'm going to just do the Orbble as well, and talk about the rest of the vehicles. So what we see out of rank 4 when it comes to Italy is we see a massive difference in playstyle. Before we have a lot of awful tank destroyers, we have a few decent medium tanks and some fun AA, whereas rank 4 it hits hard on the light vehicle side of things, and also when it comes to everything else it's a lot more mobile, at least when it comes to, as I said, the light tanks. The issue is though it doesn't really have the substance to back it up. So you can run a 3-stack of light tanks, you know, the Fiat 6614, R3 T106, the Orbble. You can have a lot of firepower in different situations, you can be able to scout, you can have a lot of speed behind you, and technically for me, I actually think it's a really fun lineup to use. But once you start getting into the nitty-gritty, once you start using the M26A1 and the M36, you see where there are issues with the tag tree. So at this moment in time, I've spaded out all 3 of the light tanks. With the M26A1, I have it all fully upgraded, apart from just a little bit on the smoke shell, because for some reason the matches last night didn't count, and then the M36B1, I have got this much in, and we'll talk about why I'm not waiting to spade this vehicle while going on. Also, 70,000 players, dead game, lol lol. So when it comes to the light tanks, let's go through them one at a time. So we've got the Fiat 6614. Now this is a little bit of a conglomeration of interesting ideas. This is the first light tank that you'll probably get your hands on. It has one 106mm recoilless rifle, and on top of it, it also has the aiming machine gun, which is probably not the best idea to use, and then it also has some grenade launchers for you to reposition. What it also has is 8mm of armor. Now, why is 8mm of armor a problem, even though it's angled so it increases to about 20mm? Not so much on the side, but why is this an issue? Well, at 6.3, 6.7, there's this wonderful lineup that America has. You have basically 3 heavy tanks. You have the T-34, you have the T-29 and the T-30. You will also get up-tiered into the 7.0 bracket and the 7.7, where you have the T-32s, M46, M47, M103s. What do all of these machines have in common? Well, they have a 50 cal. You know what that 50 cal pens? 26mm or 22mm at 30 degrees. You know what armor you have on this wonderful little Fiat? Not enough is the answer. So you can get 50 cal to death, and you will get 50 cal to death a lot when it comes to this machine. And since the first week or so of the patch, or maybe the first month or so, people didn't realize this, so it wasn't as bad. But now people have realized it, and therefore you will die very quickly, and people won't even waste main armament on you. On top of this, you obviously get hull broken, and if you actually face some really good players and they don't have 50 cals, what they'll actually do is shoot right here, where there is literally only 9mm of effective thickness. Don't even talk to me about the aircraft, because the aircraft are having a field day too on all of these armoured cars, with only 8mm on the top of the Fiat 6614. When it comes to the R3 T106, you got 15mm, and since the Orbble is exactly the same chassis as the Fiat, you have only 8mm too. So yeah, you can see there's already quite a few issues with these light armoured cars. They are definitely light, but they are, at least the Fiat and the Orbble, are light enough to be able to get killed by 50 cals. And this is a big issue when it comes to it. And even for the R3 has the same problem, where even though it has this wonderful 33mm on the front, so this stops 50 cals, it still has this area here, and also this area area here where 50 cals can go through and kill the crew, and mainly kill the gunner. So the Fiat 6614 I actually had a lot of fun in. It was really interesting to use, and it was mainly because it was quite maneuverable. It was maneuverable from the start before all of the upgrades came in, and even afterwards, you know, it's still... It's a pretty nice vehicle just to kind of toss around. The main issues with it, as I said, is the survivability, which is kind of non-existent, and also this area here. So one of the things you're going to learn really quick with the Fiat 6614 is that because of the way that this is set up, the central hatch where it has what looks like you can either put a gun on it or some kind of optics on it, you can't put the recoilless rifle down. So if you need to attack an enemy, the best place to attack it at, especially if you're on a hill or something, is from this area here. So from around about here to around about here, when it comes to you actually killing them. So around about 45 degrees to the top right of your machine. Therefore you can get full gun depression on it, and you can get some gun elevation. Because the issue as well is obviously you can see if you have an enemy behind you, and let's say it is you know, it's on level playing field to you, because of where the hatch is, you can't actually aim your gun upwards. So this is obviously a bit of an issue for the machine. So if you need to engage an enemy, a lot of the time it is much better to actually move your vehicle into position so you can attack them in this quadrant here. As I said, never use your 50 cal as a ranging item. If you need to use a ranging item, please use your ranger. Once you fire that 50 cal on the top, you will be dead, and if you need to reposition, the smoke shells are definitely there. The reverse on this machine is very good compared to a lot of vehicles at this BR. So generally the playstyle which I incorporate is the idea that you get into a position early, right, with this machine. You sit there, you scout. If anybody comes near you, you pop them with the 106mm, and then if they don't die, or if you see more of their friends, you reverse, reposition, get into another aggressive scouting position. This should be seen as a scout first and a tank destroyer second. This is not something like an Ontos, which is more of a ka-ka-ka kind of thing, where it just kind of comes at you with all barrels. Instead, you only have one, therefore it should be used only when necessary. On top of this as well, there is definitely some discussions about the heat or the hash. I personally only load heat in this thing, and the reason is because the main enemies I come up against are those American heavies. So, as I said, the T-34, T-30, T-29, T-32, M103. And the hash, if you hit the turret on these things, doesn't do anything. If you hit here, sometimes it will bounce. If you hit here, sometimes it will also bounce. And, or not penetrate, I should say. So with heat, the best thing for me is to try and hit this lower ammo deck right here, and therefore going through the upper plate and being able to hit this, or just going through the turret trying to knock out the gunner and running away. But even if you do that, just remember they have the gunner and also the loader and also the commander, and they have 350 cals on top of everything. So make sure that you kill all of them before you start running, otherwise you are going to die pretty quickly. You also have a crew of 4, which you think would help with survivability. Not really. I've actually found this thing way more survivable than the Fiat, and I don't really know why. And also, here is actually something I want to point out. So, even though this is an armored car, right? Even though it is a scout car, it's big. Like, you would think that this is quite a small machine, or you think you would design a machine which was supposed to be a scout car, you would design it to be small. This isn't a small machine, it's quite a big machine, especially when we compare it to like the M26, the Ontos, you know, even stuff like, look at this Tetrarch here. This machine for an armored car is big. Like, you can see how big it is, and that means that it gives a big silhouette on the map, and therefore it is easy to see from the air, it is easy to see from the ground, and people will go after you because of this. And you'll find that a lot of the times, even if you survive and you do well at the first stages of the game, you will end up dead via plane or, or via airstrike, which is another thing. If you decide to use your speed to go and capture a zone really quick, you will be artied and you will die. It's very much as simple as that. There is nothing that will stop it. A HE shell can land miles away from you and you will still die in this machine. So when we look at this and we compare it to a Churchill, it is pretty much the same length as a Churchill, it is slightly lower in height, and it's just a little bit less wide. This is not a small machine. This is a big machine, and it should be seen as that, especially when it comes to a scout vehicle. And therefore, we go on to the next machine, the R3 T106, which is right here below the Fiat. It is 6.7, whereas this is 6.3. I would say this is kind of the cream of the crop of the three of the machines. The reason is because it has the firepower from the 106mm. It doesn't really have anything that gets in the way of the 106mm. On top of this, it also has the ability to go 360 with them, so it has really nice maneuverability, or versatility, sorry, when it comes to moving the guns around. It also is the fastest and also the smallest out of them, and has the most armor. So even though it doesn't have a ton of armor, it has the most. It nearly has double the armor of the Fiat and the Orbble. And also, because of the way everything is positioned, all of the crew are positioned in the front. They're actually positioned in a way, so if you can actually stick these things kind of out the back, looking behind you. You can stick your booty out where the engine and also the radiator and the fuel tanks are, and you can take shots. And yes, your engine may get taken out, yes, you may get 50 cal'd, but it won't kill the crew and knock you out, so you can maybe repair in time. Now, once again, this is more of a tank destroyer than the other two, but it definitely should not be seen as a tank destroyer. This is still a scout first, tank destroyer second. It does have, of course, double the firepower of the rest, but one thing I have run into personally with this thing is that I have run out of ammo more than its predecessors, and that's just because it has it doesn't have a ton of rounds. It has, what, 5 per gun? So that is something you have to worry about. They do reload independently, so you don't have to shoot both in order to reload them. You can see that the first one is reloading before we have actually fired the next one, and you can see that it does go 360. So generally what I like to do is, let's say the next tank here is a really nice position to be able to scout from, because as I said, these are scouts first, and you know, little mobile things second. You can also shoot on the move a little bit better than the other ones, but I wouldn't recommend it. So let's say that's a really nice scouting position. So you do a 180. Unfortunately, the reverse is slightly worse than the others, so you'd probably want to get a little bit closer to this before you do this. But you set up in a position like this. You set up... Whoa, what's going on there? There we go. You set up in a position like this. You binocular over, so the enemy shouldn't be able to see you from here. You use it to be able to scout all of the enemies around, and then if you are spotted, or if you have an artillery strike coming, then you just run away, and if you need to shoot somebody, you can shoot them and run. With the first 0 to 20 kilometers, the recoilless rifles are actually pretty good at shooting on the move, but the problem is, because of this car, because of the speed of it, you generally don't go that speed. You're normally going a little bit faster. Another thing is also it's quite bouncy, so you can see that the suspension is definitely not tight. And on top of this, another thing to also think about is the one issue with wheeled vehicles. Like the speed of this is very good, yeah, we can definitely tell that the speed is very good, and on flat, or you know, we'll call it lighter areas, so if we're on stuff such as like a ground which is like this mud, so light dry mud or roads, this thing is incredibly fast. If you're on snow or desert, you are slower than some medium tanks. I've been overtaken in stuff like the Fiat and the Orbble by things like Panther 2s, and that's because of tracks versus wheels. So in many scenarios, if you are actually taking these vehicles out, if you are actually going, you know, going into maps, it can really depend on the map how useful you are. Because every map has lovely scouting positions, and I've done a few videos talking about the scouting positions and, you know, how they work and, you know, where to go and all of this stuff. But sometimes it isn't good to go to those scouting positions because you set up in a way that you haven't got there quick enough, and therefore you can get overrun before the enemy gets to you. With these very fast scout cars, what you want to do is be able to be an aggressive scout, and if you get found out, well, you do have guns to deal with it. Yes, if you get RT'd, you die, and another thing, the reason why you want to be aggressive is because after the first 5 minutes, after the first 10 minutes of the game, what you may end up in... Still not amphibious. It's a shame. But what you may end up in with it is you may end up in a scenario where you haven't really done a lot for your team at the 5 or 10 minute mark, and the planes start coming in. Now, when the planes start coming in, remember that, especially for the US, which is the main competitor you will be facing, because Italy gets paired up with Germany a lot, you will end up against a lot of stuff with 50 cals. So the P-51D, right? It's a great machine in ground realistic because it gets its hands on rockets and also bombs. The rockets will kill you. They have more pen, so even the HVARs will kill you, and the 50 cals will also kill you. So you can see the problem here. Whereas these are really effective in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the match if you dodge artillery, and then after the 10-minute mark, or even the 5-minute mark, depending on how efficient the enemy team is, you are going to be running into a lot of scenarios where you're just going to get killed by planes, no matter where you are. People's eyes are good in this game. They're going to be able to see you, no matter how small you think you are. But it does have good firepower, it does have good speed. Armor is, of course, the issue. Then we move on to the Fiat, it is a Fiat, but it's also an Orbble. So the Orbble 74, basically you take this machine here, the Fiat 6614, and you stick a turret on it, and that's pretty much it, right? You stick a turret on it, and it makes you even bigger. It makes you the size of even taller than a Churchill. And what it does give you, though, is a really good 90mm. The 90mm is the Cockerel Mark III. It gives you access to heat with 300mm of pen, and the main thing being 890 meters per second, which is a lot higher than the other two recoilless rifles. Then it gives you some HESH, which I never use, and then some smoke. I understand if people want to use HESH, I get it. For me personally, the issue that HESH has is it is unreliable, and in scout cars where people are pushing me hard, I need something that is reliable, and therefore the heat is the way to go. So, the Orbble is the size of a medium tank with the armor of a shoebox with the gun of a medium tank, right? So, it's 300mm of pen is good. The main thing is that its muzzle velocity is high, so I actually use this much more of a scout. So, you know, before I was talking about aggressive scouting, so pretty much just going close to the enemy and then scouting from there. With this, it is much more of a passive scouter, so trying to keep it away from the enemies and trying to keep it by itself. Now, you can see this is a T-62. Now, yes, the Soviet vehicles are kind of maybe a little bit smaller than other medium tanks, but look how big the Orbble is. Look at the size of this thing. This is a scout tank. It's huge. It's just smaller than a T-62. I don't understand why in the other vehicles you need so many crew, and even in this one, you could easily make it smaller and just have 2 crew members and that's it, if you wanted just a vehicle which could scout. And the thing is with the 90mm is really useful at 6.7, especially against a lot of the heavies that you face, you know, the big tanks, but it has the same issue as the Fiat 6614, where it has no armor on it, so it gets 50 cal to death. And even at this level, something I haven't really talked about when it does face Soviets, because you do face Soviets from time to time, what happens is you get dishked to death, as you can see on the top of this T55 here. This also has smoke as well, just like the Fiat, so repositioning is something that you can do. They all unfortunately drop in the same place, and there's no way of stopping it from doing that. Like, you can't fire one at once, so you're pretty much wasting 6 smoke shells. It would be much better if it made a semicircle like the others, but unfortunately it doesn't. It just all fires in the same place, so you don't have as much maneuverability as you may want. It's also another one that is bouncy as all hell. After they changed the way that the the gun recoil works, it has made it a lot more useful. But the way I see this vehicle, as I said, is you want to be behind your lines. You want to be behind the mediums, behind the heavies, scouting for them, and then if you see some enemies in scouting positions, or you see some enemies trying to snipe, you use your gun to try and deal with them. Like, that is basically the difference between this and the other ones. And you still have the speed to get around the map, you still have the fact that you can still affect the battle in a very aggressive way, but I just choose not to. I don't think it's the right way to do it with this machine. Another thing to also point out with the 90, with all of these machines actually, I shouldn't just say it for this one, all of them have a great ability to be up-tiered. They all are have good penetration on their guns, they have good speed, they have a lot going for them in the up tier. So if you want to run them even at 7.7 or even higher, you probably can do with not really many repercussions. And that is always nice, you know, especially when you have a tree which doesn't have as much stuff in it compared to others. Like, if you want to run a 7.7 lineup, you can run like the Orbble with these two. If you want to even run an 8.0 lineup, and let's say you haven't got the 105 yet, and you don't have the OF40, you can run these and do well in them. But yeah, overall, my experiences have been very positive in these. The only real big issues is the fact that the Fiat versions have absolutely no armor, and they have these areas here, which can easily get all of your crew killed in a matter of seconds, and also artillery is just a killer for these. These are just not survivable machines, but if you play correctly, you will be fine. Now, on to the less than satisfactory ones. The M26A1. So, the M26 in-game, I've personally had a lot of issues with. I think it's just a medium tank masquerading as a slow machine which doesn't really do a lot. Now, they just brought in a new system which changed the way that calculations work for armor penetration. This means that the M82 shot is unequivocally better than the M318, and it is a lot better when it comes to its 0-degree pen, and therefore there is literally no reason to use the M318 over anything else. So what I do is I load 20 M82 shots and 10 M332 shots just in case I run into a Soviet heavy. The issue with this M26A1 compared to the other one is, well, twofold. The first thing, this is 6.7. You know what's really popular for German and also Italian teams? 7.7. You've got the Centauro, you've got the M47, but mainly the people are, a lot of people are playing the Centauro. For the Germans, you have some wonderful vehicles at 7.7. The Leopard 1, the M48A2 is not bad. A lot of people like the Mouse, and even then, you have stuff like the Tiger II 105 that people like to bring. Now, what do the US have at 7.7? They have some large vehicles. The M103, the M48, the M60, and also the T32s, and we've talked about the heavy tanks before. The problem with the M26, this machine, has always been its penetration against heavy tanks. The M26 in the American tree, the reason why it struggled is because it couldn't always reliably pen the Tiger 2H that you see here. Whereas vehicles such as the T34, T29, and now T30 can reliably pen the Tiger 2H. The T32 can do the same thing now with the buff that it has to its shells and also to the T41 shot and to the APCR round. The M26 stock and also the M26 fully upgraded, the stock version finds it hard to penetrate these machines, and the fully upgraded version finds it hard to do damage to these teams whilst penetrated because of the APCR. This machine is no different, the M26A1. The only difference between this and the M26 you see in the American tree is the gun on this is the same as the M46's gun, apart from you don't get heat on this gun. So if you've ever used the birdcage, the M46 right here, what you will find is the birdcage is useless. Well, it's sometimes useful, but it's a fun vehicle once you get the engine upgrade and you get this, the heat shell, because it pens 300mm. So those heavy tanks that you were dealing with for a long time with this shot here, which can't even pen them, you know, you finally got something that can do a lot of damage and, you know, you can do well. So fully upgraded, the M46 is a really good 7.0, but if you're not fully upgraded, it struggles. The M26, for the Italians, is exactly the same way, apart from you don't get that heat shell. So this thing goes from 6.3 in the American tree to 6.7 because of a gun where you don't even get its nice shell on it. That's the reality of the M26A1 in the Italian tree. And the other issue with it is the fact that it goes up against even better heavies than the Tiger 2H. It goes up against the big bruisers, the T34. And the only place where you can pen these things are the lower glacis. You struggle a lot of the time with the upper glacis because you either hit this area or this area or this area, or you hit this area or this area, or maybe they're angled a little bit and there's no way you're going through, so you have to aim for the lower glacis. Now with the M82 shot, that does mean that you can one-shot them quite easily, but the problem is hitting that shot, and at the same time, they can just look at you and you die. There is a massive issue with the M26, and it's the same in the Italian, same in the American tree. I have to aim with this thing to be able to kill things. Things don't have to aim at me to kill me. That's the problem with it. The meta vehicles, if you look at the Lorraine, if you look at the T44-100, if you look at the American heavies, nothing has to aim to really pen me. All they have to do is shoot center mass in this area here, or they can even go straight through here, you know, after the nerf to the gun mantlets. They can just look at me and I die, where I have to precisely aim at them. So therefore, I have to get the jump on them, and you can't do that against whole teams when they're pushing you. There is a reason why in this M26, I have, I have a positive KD just, but look at the win rate. The win rate is diabolical in this machine. And this is from a person who overall has a 54.2% win rate, right? And last month, 55.5%. So my win rate is actually good this month, apart from these damn things. The Italian vehicles that I've been playing, right? 41.1% is diabolical. It's, you know, generally when you look at games, 40, you kind of, if anything is outside of the 45 or 55% range, it should be seen as really unbalanced, right? Because that's just kind of, if you look at any MOBAs or if you look at any other games, if something has a win rate which is less than 45 or is more than 55, it is deemed as inherently broken. Whereas in this game, it just isn't seen like that. And for me to get a 41% win rate on anything is shocking. And it gets worse for another vehicle we're about to get to. But yeah, so the M26, it's a slow medium tank. Its gun, once you get the M82, is okay, but it's still not great. Its reload is not good. Its armor is awful when we compare it to the other meta vehicles, and you just get stomped by everything. And this is supposed to be your main battle tank at 6.7. This is why I much prefer just taking these three instead, because at least these three, I have a decent playstyle, I know exactly what I'm doing, whereas with the M26A1, I just feel like I'm completely useless. Like, I'll get 1 or 2 kills, and I can't push because I'm too slow, and if I do aggressively push into the enemy, all they have to do is look at me and I die. The amount of T29s and T30s I've run into with this M26A1 that have just annihilated me because all they have to do is look and shoot. Where I have to perfectly aim to hit that low glacis, they can just look at me and I die. It's incredibly annoying, and that's not even getting into the other issues, such as the French 7.0s, the Lorraine, which can just look at me and die, AMX-50, same thing, AMX M4, even Char 25T has a field day against this thing. The Soviets, at 6.7, they don't really have a 6.7 lineup, so you always get uptiered into 7.0 or 7.7. T44 looks at you and you dies. IS-3, same thing. IS-4M, BMP, all of these machines. And you can't even snipe with, oh, don't even get me started on the damn British that just lol pen you when they feel like it. And also have stabilizers, which this thing doesn't have. So, with this, you have to play defensively, you have to play supportive, you have to support the Tiger 2s that are on your team, you have to be able to follow them into battle and do well, and, you know, you can do that, but the odds are massively stacked against you, and that is the problem with this thing. And if you want to use this as a sniping tank, 853 meters per second. Now, I just talked about the Orbble, how that is good on this machine, because you can sit back and you can snipe with 800 meters per second compared to the recoilless rifles. It is also 890 meters per second, so that's more than the M26. But the difference is, this has 300 millimeters of pen. So I can, as long as I hit the enemy at range, I can kill it. If I do that with the M26, that doesn't happen, because the pen is just not good enough on the gun. It's the third M26 I've had to play after the Ariete and the M26 in the US tree, and my god, I have exactly the same experiences, apart from this one has been the worst, because I didn't have to in the other ones face the American heavies, the British stabilizers, and the French quick tanks, while not having the support of a ton of other vehicles, such as, basically you need a bunch of Tiger 2s on your team to be able to hold them while you try and do something. You can't even flank in this damn thing, it's so slow. When you are being outpaced by heavies, that doesn't feel good. And there's also an issue with the max cruise control on it. The max cruise control sometimes gets stuck around 25 kilometers an hour, where this thing I have got it up to 40, 45 kilometers an hour without using cruise control, so that needs to be looked at. And the last vehicle, which I am just not even gonna bother. I have got some of the upgrades on it, as you've seen. We've got parts, FPE, brake system, suspension, adjustment of fire, getting the M82 shot now, which I probably should have got first, but it won't matter. Welcome to the M36B1. Now, what is the advantage of the M36B1 over everything else we've seen so far? It's 6.3. That means that it can't get up tiered into 7.3. 7.7. So instead, you just fight 6.7s all day. And as we've talked about before, we have some wonderful 6.7s and 7.0s in the game. Lorraine, AMX-40, Centurion Mark 10, Centurion Mark 3, Carnarvon, T30, T34, T32, M46, all of these things. You know what all of these things do? All of these meta vehicles, they go through you like butter. And even though this thing is supposed to have a little bit more maneuverability, it's supposed to have a little bit better gun traverse, all of this stuff over its compatriots, it doesn't matter. It's huge. It's massive. And this is a problem. And you might not see it as a problem, okay, but it is. When you are a tank destroyer, Your job is to shoot other tanks and to be able to penetrate them, do a lot of damage. The M26A1 has the issue where it struggles to penetrate when it's stock. It has exactly the same rounds as the Pershing, right? So there is literally no point in taking this over the Pershing when it comes to killing power. So therefore I'm just going to default to the Pershing. It's also larger than the Pershing and has less armor. It's huge. It's a massive machine, and I'm going to prove it to you. Like, if you want to hide this somewhere, it's impossible. It would be alright if it had some armor. You know, the T95, right? The T95 is a pretty cool machine, because it's a huge machine, so you're going to see it coming, but it's got a ton of armor. So if you don't have a really good heat shell, you're going to struggle to pen it, and even if you do pen it, you're not really going to one-shot it. This, because of those American heavies, because of the AP for the French, they're just going to one-shot you every time in this. What a lot of the time they'll do is just shoot your turret and just take your turret out. And you know what's wonderful about having a Sherman chassis? Let's say you are aiming, you shoot a T-34, it does minor damage, he shoots you, knocks out your turret because that's all they can see. Oh, it looks like this has British reverse syndrome. Great. Another wonderful, wonderful thing about this. But yeah, this is another machine that suffers with not having a round that can easily penetrate all the machines it faces, whereas a lot of nations have a round which easily pens it. So you have to aim perfectly, they don't. Look how big this thing is. Look at the height, look at the width, look at the length. This is compared to a Churchill. It's huge. You can see this coming from a mile away. And on top of it, you know what it also has? It has an open top. And because of the way that the breach is structured right here, and because of the armor on the breach, and because of where all of the guys inside are, you can't die from one pass. But well, unless they hit the ammo at the back, but it seems like a lot of aircraft people have not figured out that you can actually pen this here. Maybe they just like killing the people in here. But what you can do is you can red or break the breach. You can kill everybody inside, forcing you to repair, and therefore you're a stationary target for them to kill. On top of this, you can just do 2 pass-bys and kill these 3 people, and then just kill one of them, and you win. I use this as a second vehicle to my M26, and what that means is whenever I take this out, whoops, let's just bring it back. Whenever I bring this out, there is generally planes around the air, and they just annihilate me. So maybe as a first spawn, it would do a lot better, but then as a first spawn, you run into all the heavies, and you can't pen them reliably. You're supposed to be a tank destroyer. Unless you get this round and do absolutely no damage to the heavies, you can't do diddly. Therefore, the stock grind is well, it's not impossible, it's just really annoying. And on top of it, you're just huge. You're just a big fat Pershing. That's the difference. Same gun, same turret traverse, same reload, less armor, same rounds. Yes, you are technically a BR bracket lower. You are 6'3", and the Pershing is 6'7". This is no better than this. There might even be an argument saying it's worse. Because this is at 5'7". It has exactly the same round that you have on a slightly worse gun, therefore it has less penetration. What I would do for the M36 in the Italian tree is I would drop it to 6.0. It won't make a difference because you don't have a lineup to run it with, but if you at least do that, it has the chance of being down-tiered. I think it's definitely the whole like rock and a hard place, because it's kind of like the ARL, where you're never going to have a lineup around it unless you build one. But this might be my worst performing tank I've ever used. 8 kills, 30 deaths, 37% win rate. Those are not good numbers. and they're not numbers I'm personally used to. God damn. But yeah, so a little bit of hit and miss. I've enjoyed the light tanks so far. I've enjoyed playing some of the Centauro as well. We'll probably do individual reviews for rank 5 stuff. But yeah, this line, fun. Definitely different playstyles compared to the rest of the trees. This is just a worse vehicle than the meta ones that we have. There's a reason why nobody uses the M26 in the American tree, same as this one. The M36 is one of the worst vehicles in this tree. It follows a great pattern of wonderful Semaventes that I've had to deal with. So yeah, it's very sad to see this American tank be useless because of the fact that it's a tank destroyer that cannot reliably pen other tanks. The same issue all the other Italian tank destroyers have. Anyway, that is having a look at the rank 4 of Italy. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.